Imagine, just for a moment, that you're sitting by a river. The water moves quietly, constantly, never the same from one second to the next. Maybe you try to scoop some into your hands, and it slips right through. That's a little like consciousness. Maybe it feels strange to think of yourself as a river. Maybe you want to grab a piece of you and hold it, but it's okay. It's not meant to be held. It flows. Always. You know, most of us carry this quiet feeling inside, that there's someone in here seeing, thinking, remembering. A me, a solid me. But if you really pause and look, can you find it? If you say, I'm sad, where's that I exactly? Is it in your chest? Your head? Yesterday's I feels familiar, but is it the same as today's? It's okay if it's confusing. Maybe it's supposed to be, because the Buddha, a long time ago, invited people to just notice this, to watch the mind, the senses, the moments, not to explain it with words, not in books, but in your own experience. Consciousness, in his teaching, isn't a thing inside you. It's not a hidden soul. It's more like a river, flowing, changing. You never touch the same water twice. And in that river, there are moments of knowing. When you see a color, hear a sound, taste a flavor, feel a touch, each one creates a little spark of awareness. You might call it eye consciousness, ear consciousness, or mind consciousness. But really, they're just moments of noticing. One comes, it passes. Another comes. It's not a separate someone living inside you, holding your memories. It's a happening. Conditions meet, awareness arises, and then it's gone. Try it now. Close your eyes. Listen. Maybe there's a car outside, a bird in the distance. Notice how the sound appears in your mind, and then it fades. Maybe a thought comes, I need to do this or that, and then it's gone too. Nothing in this river ever stays the same. The mind never stops moving, and that's okay. That's the natural flow. This is what the Buddha called impermanence. Everything changes. Everything passes. And if you watch closely, you might notice there is no solid me controlling it all. The self you feel so certain about, it's more like a pattern of waves, rising and falling. Sometimes we think, but I am angry, I am scared, I am joyful. And yes, those feelings are real. But notice this. Anger is a thing you carry around forever. It's a rising wave in your river. Heat in the chest, quick thoughts, a story forming. And just like the river, it changes. Sometimes it fades when the situation changes. Sometimes it softens when you breathe. Consciousness is simply the knowing of it, the noticing that anger is present. You're not the anger, you're the witness of it. It's okay if this feels strange at first. You might even think, well, maybe I am this anger, maybe I am this sadness. And that's okay too. Just notice. Watch. Gently. When we stop clinging to the idea of a fixed self, something shifts. You may feel a little lighter. Things don't have to be owned. Emotions come and go. Thoughts rise and fall. Even your sense of time, of who you are, is softer, more fluid. There's a kind of quiet peace in this, a gentle release, because you start to see things as they are without forcing them to stay. Life feels a little more honest, and maybe a little less heavy. I like to think of it this way. The mind is a river, and you are not a rock standing in it. You are not something that can be held. You are the noticing of the river itself. And just as the river can't be held, it can't be controlled, but it can be admired, watched, followed. And when you do, there's a strange, soft freedom. And if you stay here with me for a while, maybe you'll notice something. A sound, a thought, a feeling, just a little spark of knowing. And then it passes. And you're okay. You're safe. This is where the journey begins. This little river of awareness is yours. No one else can touch it. You can explore it gently, like dipping your fingers in the cool water and letting it run through. If this feels like a place you want to sit a little longer, maybe you'll like to stay connected. There's more to discover about this river, about how it moves, about the seeds it carries. If you're enjoying this gentle exploration, it would mean a lot if you subscribe, so we can keep walking this path together moment by moment. And remember, it's okay if you don't understand it all. It's okay if you feel a little lost in the current. The river doesn't judge. You don't have to grasp. You just watch, breathe, and notice, one moment at a time. And maybe, just maybe, you'll see that what you thought was a solid me is really just a beautiful, ever-flowing river of awareness, alive, shifting, always moving. And it's okay to simply be in it. Maybe you've had a moment, walking somewhere quiet, where nothing really happened, and suddenly a wave of sadness just rises in your chest. No story, no reason, just a cloud passing through the sky of your mind. Maybe you wondered, why now? Why me? And it's okay to feel puzzled, maybe even frustrated, because these moments aren't random. They're echoes. The Buddha called them the ripening of old seeds, seeds planted long ago by your actions, words, thoughts, little choices, sometimes big, often tiny, that shape the flow of your life. We often call it karma, but karma isn't punishment, and it isn't fate. It's more like planting in a garden. Every intentional act, every word spoken with care or anger, every thought you feed, these are seeds. Some sprout quickly, some sleep in the soil for years. Sometimes, without knowing, you water them, and they bloom into moods, habits, tendencies. Maybe someone who always reacts with kindness, even when pushed or hurt, didn't become that in one moment. It's hundreds of small choices, day by day. And maybe the same is true for fear, jealousy, impatience. These too are seeds. They grow, sometimes in surprising ways. Think about it. When you feel irritation bubbling up, or sudden joy, or an urge to lash out, maybe it's a seed planted long ago ripening now. It's okay. You're not broken. You're noticing the river flowing. And here's the subtle part. Consciousness carries these seeds. Not in a file, not like a storage box. More like an ocean under the waves. The surface rises and falls. Thoughts, feelings, fleeting moments. But deep below, there's a quiet current holding all these possibilities. When the conditions are right, a seed sprouts. Sometimes you see it immediately. Sometimes it waits, quietly, for a lifetime, for the right moment to emerge. Some Buddhist traditions call this the storehouse consciousness, 𝐂𝐨𝐦𝐦𝐬𝐞. You can imagine it like a field of soil, waiting. You drop seeds, and with your actions, your intentions, your thoughts. Some grow into flowers quickly. Some remain underground, waiting for sunlight. And when they do appear, they're not a punishment, not a reward, not a permanent self asserting itself. They are simply the unfolding of what has been planted, the natural flowering of conditions. It's okay if this feels mysterious. It's not meant to be fully understood with words. It's meant to be experienced in your own river of awareness. Maybe you met someone who seems naturally patient, calm, or compassionate. You might wonder, are they just born that way? Maybe yes, maybe no. Perhaps they planted seeds through hundreds of small, mindful choices over years. And maybe you see someone quick to anger, anxious, or fearful. Their river carries seeds planted long ago, just like yours. It's okay. We all carry currents that stretch back beyond our memory. But the beauty is, you can plant new seeds right now, in this moment. Even small acts matter. Breathing consciously, speaking gently, noticing a thought instead of acting on it. These are the ways to plant seeds that bloom into peace and understanding. And every time you pause and notice, every time you let a wave of anger rise and fall without chasing it, you are tending your garden. It doesn't erase the old seeds. It doesn't need to. You're simply giving the river a chance to flow more freely, to carry lighter water, to shimmer a little in the sunlight. And here's something that might comfort you. Even the storehouse, even this deep current, is not permanent. It's not a cage. It changes. New seeds are planted, old seeds fade, and the river keeps flowing. You don't have to fix everything. You just need to notice. You just need to be present with what arises. And maybe that's the start of real freedom. Not by trying to erase the past, not by trying to grasp a solid self, but by simply seeing the flow, understanding the seeds, and planting new ones with care. So, next time you feel a mood rise, sadness, irritation, joy, just pause, breathe, watch. You might see an old seed ripening. You might see a new one being planted. And in that noticing, you're participating in the river of consciousness. You're alive in it. You're a part of it. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough. It's enough to start learning to float instead of fighting the current. To let the river carry you rather than trying to hold it in your hands. And if this little journey with me feels gentle, like a quiet conversation in the middle of your day, maybe you'd like to stay connected. There's more river to explore, more seeds to notice, more moments to see. Subscribing is not just clicking a button. It's a way of saying, yes, I want to watch this river flow with care moment by moment. And it would mean a lot to me if we continued this gentle exploration together. Remember, it's okay if you don't have all the answers. You don't need to. The river is always teaching, always showing. Sometimes it's turbulent, sometimes calm. Sometimes the sunlight hits and you see glimmers dancing on the surface. Sometimes the water is dark and deep, and you're there in it, noticing, breathing, flowing. That's the beginning of understanding. That's the first soft step towards seeing how our actions, our thoughts, and even our deepest patterns shape the moments we live in. Maybe you've ever wondered, what is consciousness anyway? Where does it come from? It's one of those questions that feels like chasing smoke. The more you reach for it, the more it slips through your fingers. And that's okay. Maybe it's not meant to be pinned down. Maybe it's meant to be noticed as it dances, fleeting alive, always changing. The Buddha didn't sit in a library to figure out with words. He looked directly at experience, at each moment, seeing how awareness arises when conditions are right. When the eye meets color, the ear meets sound, the mind meets a thought. You could think of it like tiny sparks. Eye consciousness, ear consciousness, mind consciousness. 6 types of knowing, each arising in its own way. It's not a soul controlling them, not a secret me holding them. They appear, they pass. And just like that, your sense of a solid self begins to soften. Maybe it's comforting to hear that the me you feel so sure about is more like a pattern of sparks than a fixed thing. And maybe it's a little freeing, too, because if it's a pattern, it can change. Some people look at science to answer this question. They say consciousness comes from the brain, neurons firing, chemicals sparking, circuits lighting up. And yes, that explains a lot about how we function. But it doesn't quite explain what it feels like to be you in this moment. The warmth of sunlight on your skin, the ache of missing someone, the quiet curiosity of watching a bird glide across the sky. Scientists call this the hard problem of consciousness, the part that feels alive, that can't be measured with machines or scans. And maybe that's where the river of awareness shows its true magic. Because the Buddha's view is a little different. He didn't separate mind from body, but he didn't reduce it to neurons either. Consciousness arises depending on conditions, like seeing only happens when there's an eye, light, and attention. Hearing only happens when sound meets an ear. Thoughts and feelings only happen when conditions allow. And each moment passes. Each flickers and disappears, giving way to the next. You're not a solid container holding it all. You're the noticing, the awareness moving with the current. Maybe you've read philosophers like Descartes, who said there's a thinker behind the thoughts, a soul observing, or David Hume, who looked inside and found nothing permanent at all, just impressions and fleeting experiences. Funny, isn't it, how Hume's uncertainty comes closer to Buddha's insight than Descartes' certainty. There isn't a permanent thinker behind the thoughts, a solid I watching them. There are just processes unfolding, rising and falling like waves. Maybe that feels a little strange, maybe a little liberating. It's okay if it does. Now, some other teaching, like Hinduism, talk about an eternal self, Atman, something unchanging, divine, present in every life. The Buddha noticed something else. He saw that even the deepest layers of mind, even the storehouse consciousness carrying karmic seeds, are not fixed. They change. They arise because of causes. They are conditioned. Nothing permanent hides behind them. And maybe this is a relief. You don't have to find some ultimate, unchanging self to be complete. You can be right here, noticing, breathing, living. When you really look at consciousness this way, it changes how you live. Each moment of knowing, each wave of thought or feeling is part of the river. And if you understand how it flows, you begin to see suffering more clearly, how clinging, craving, and ignoring what arises keeps the river turbulent. Maybe you've noticed this in your own life, holding on to a thought, nursing a grudge, chasing after happiness that slips through your fingers. The Buddha's teaching isn't about erasing or controlling. It's about seeing the flow, watching the sparks, and letting them move without grasping. Imagine this, a flame dancing the wind. You can't hold it. You can't pin it down. But you can watch it. You can admire it. You can notice how it changes shape with every gust, how it flickers differently depending on the air around it. Consciousness is like that. Beautiful, changing, impossible to hold. And maybe, just maybe, the more you watch, the more peace you feel. Not because something magical happens, but because you stop trying to hold the river in your hands. You let it be. And here's something gentle to carry with you. The Buddhist view of consciousness isn't about winning an argument or solving mystery. It's about noticing, understanding, and freeing yourself from the patterns that bring suffering. You don't have to grasp the whole picture at once. You don't have to fix anything. You can just be here, watching, noticing, breathing moment by moment. And if you're finding this gentle exploration meaningful, it would mean a lot if you stayed connected. Subscribing is not just clicking a button. It's a way to continue watching this river together, one quiet moment at a time. Because maybe the real question isn't, what is consciousness? Maybe it's, how are we using this moment of knowing? Are we feeding habits that keep the river churning? Or are we learning to float a little lighter? Maybe you'll notice, with a soft smile, that even noticing is a way of planting a new seed. A seed of awareness, of care, of gentle attention. And the river flows. Always. And it's okay. Sometimes when we hear the word consciousness, we automatically think of ourselves, human beings, our thoughts, our choices, our memories. Maybe you stare at a dog for a while and wondered what it's thinking, or watched the trees sway in the wind and felt a little awe, like maybe, just maybe, there's awareness in everything. And it's okay to wonder. It's natural to feel that connection. But the Buddha's teaching has something specific to say. Consciousness isn't floating everywhere. It's not in every moving thing, and it's not in nothing at all. It arises when the right conditions come together. Think about seeing. You only see when there's an eye, a visible form, and attention. If any of those conditions aren't there, the moment of seeing doesn't happen. Hearing is the same. Tasting, smelling, touching, thinking, all of these require the right conditions, and they pass. They arise, they fade. So when we ask, do animals have consciousness? The answer is yes. Animals are sentient beings. They feel pain, joy, fear, and connection. A dog may not write poetry, but it experiences the world just like we do in its own way. And maybe when you notice this, your heart softens a little. Compassion isn't just for humans. It's for every being that feels. Now, what about plants? Maybe you've seen a sunflower turn toward the sun and felt a little wonder. Plants respond to the world. They grow, bend, react to injury. But according to the Buddha, they do not have the sixth sense faculties required for full consciousness. No eye consciousness, no ear consciousness, no mind consciousness. They're alive, yes, but they don't know. It's okay. They have their own way of being, but they do not experience the world as sentient beings do. And what about the universe itself? The stars, the galaxies, the vastness of space? Maybe sometimes, standing under the night sky, you feel awe, like there's some cosmic awareness watching along with you. And it's okay to feel that. Awe is beautiful. But from a Buddhist perspective, the universe is not conscious. A rock doesn't know. A planet doesn't feel. The moon doesn't gaze back. Awareness arises in independent ways, through sense faculties, mental formations, karma, and these are not present in stars, wind, or galaxies. Complexity alone doesn't create consciousness. A computer may learn patterns. A robot may respond to stimuli, but neither experiences, feels, or suffers. This makes consciousness rare, precious, and maybe that's comforting. It reminds us to treat sentient beings, humans, animals, with care, because they feel, they suffer, they love, they are aware, and it reminds us to notice our own mind, our own river of awareness. Each sight, each sound, each thought is a fleeting spark in the current. The me we cling to isn't permanent. It's a series of moments, arising and passing. Let me tell you a small story. I once watched a dog at the park. It was old, with gray around its muzzle, but it ran to greet its owner with a joy that seemed limitless. And in that moment, I realized here was consciousness, simple and clear, pure noticing, pure feeling. No concepts of self, no worries about past or future, just alive, just being. And maybe that's what the Buddha meant. Consciousness isn't about complexity. It's about being present, being aware, feeling, knowing. It's not about holding on. It's about flow. And when we see this in ourselves, our thoughts, our emotions, our little bursts of anger or joy, maybe we begin to understand that it's all part of the same river. Consciousness arises, moves, passes. Not permanent, not owned, not fixed. Watching this unfold gently, without judgment, is a kind of freedom, a soft freedom. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to grasp. You just notice. You just breathe. And that noticing is enough to start planting new seeds of kindness, attention, and understanding. So, if you feel drawn to this gentle exploration, watching the river, noticing the sparks, feeling the flow of awareness in yourself and others, it might be nice to keep this connection. Subscribing isn't just a click. It's a way to walk with a river, quietly, moment by moment. And maybe, just maybe, we'll learn together to float a little lighter, to see consciousness as it is, fleeting, precious, and alive. And remember, it's okay if some things remain mysterious. Not everything has to make sense. The stars move, the trees grow, the dog feels joy. You feel, notice, breathe. That's enough. And maybe, in that gentle noticing, the world feels a little closer, a little warmer, a little more alive. Maybe you've noticed that life often pulls us in 100 directions at once. Thoughts rush, feelings rise and fall. The me you thought was solid feels slippery. And it's okay. That's the river of consciousness, always flowing, always moving. But the Buddha whispered a gentle truth. You don't have to be swept away. You can learn to watch, not to control, not to fix, just to see. And that watching, that noticing is mindfulness. Mindfulness isn't about trying to stop the mind. It's not about forcing calm. It's simply paying attention, soft, gentle, like a friend listening without judgment. You notice your body, your breath, your thoughts, your emotions. You watch how they rise, how they pass. Maybe an irritation rises. You notice it. Maybe a memory drifts in. You notice it. You don't chase. You don't push. You simply allow yourself to see what's happening right now. And in that seeing, something subtle begins to shift. I remember sitting quietly in a park once, just breathing, noticing the wind brushing leaves, the distant laughter of children, the warmth of the sun. Thoughts came, worries, memories, and I just let them float by. I didn't need to hold on. I didn't need to solve anything. Just noticing them gently. It was like watching waves on a lake, seeing their patterns, letting them ripple and then fade. That simple watching, that tiny attention, felt like freedom, a little release from the tight grip of me, try to control everything. The Buddha taught that through mindfulness, you begin to see the 3 marks of experience: impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and non-self. Things change. Moods rise and fall. Experiences come and go. And that me you thought was solid? It isn't. It's a series of moments, a flickering light, a river that keeps flowing. When you see this clearly, the seeds of suffering, the habits of clinging, craving, resisting, start to lose their power, not because you fight them, not because you judge yourself, but because clarity itself is gentle, like sunlight illuminating the water. Maybe you've had moments when a small irritation felt huge or a joy felt fleeting. Through mindfulness, you start to notice that these aren't permanent. They rise, they flow, they pass. You can breathe with them. You can sit with them. You can watch without chasing or resisting. And slowly, quietly, the mind begins to settle. Not forced, not controlled, just flowing with less turbulence, shimmering a little more clearly. Sometimes mindfulness reveals surprising things. A buried sadness may rise. A long-forgotten memory may drift to the surface. And it's okay to meet it gently. You don't have to fix it. You just notice. You just breathe. In that noticing, the old seeds of karma are seen. And once seen, they lose some of their grip. They are no longer hidden, pulling you unknowingly. Awareness softens a river. Awareness allows it to flow more freely. And here's the beauty. This isn't about someday far away, about some distant enlightenment. It's about now, right here, right now, watching a breath, feeling the warmth of sunlight, hearing the sound of distant birds. Each moment of attention is a little planting of new seeds, seeds of clarity, kindness, calm, understanding. And slowly, the flow of consciousness shifts. You begin to notice how each ripple of thought or emotion carries a choice. The choice to be aware, to be gentle, to plant something new. It's okay if you don't get it perfectly. It's okay if your mind wanders, if thoughts rush, if feelings rise and fall uncontrollably. That's the river. That's life. Mindfulness isn't about perfection. It's about noticing. And noticing is enough, even for a moment, even for a breath, even for the soft whisper of awareness that says, I am here. I see. I feel. That gentle presence is the beginning of waking up. And maybe, if you're enjoying this gentle journey, it would be nice to keep exploring together. Subscribing isn't just a click. It's like leaning into the river, letting yourself float along, noticing each wave, each ripple, each spark of awareness. Because the more we watch, the more we see. And seeing is the first soft step toward peace. So maybe next time a thought arises, or a feeling sweeps in, or a mood lingers, you pause, breathe, notice. You don't need to chase it. You don't need to push it away. You just watch, and slowly, softly, the river of your consciousness flows more freely. And maybe in that gentle flow, you feel a little more at ease, a little more alive, a little more awake. Maybe you've noticed that when you sit quietly, watching your thoughts and feelings, something subtle begins to shift. The mind isn't as tight. The emotion's not as urgent. That's the beauty of mindfulness. It doesn't fight. It doesn't force. It just lets the river flow, noticing the currents as they come and go. And in that flow, we start to see the seeds of karma, those little traces of past intentions. Not as punishment, not as fate, but as something to understand, to watch, and to gently guide. Imagine this. A small irritation arises because someone cut you off in traffic. In that instant, the river of your mind spikes with heat and tension. And maybe before, you'd have clenched, shouted, or carried it for hours. But now you notice. You feel the tension in your chest, the rapid thoughts, the urge to act. You just notice. You breathe. And maybe you realize this irritation isn't you. It's a wave in the river. It comes and it will go. And in that simple noticing, the power of that seed begins to change. The Buddha taught that every intention we plant leaves a trace in the river. Some seeds ripen quickly, like impatience or anger. Others take time, kindness, patience, generosity. And here's the secret. Even the deepest, oldest seeds can transform when met with awareness. A habit that has shaped you for years doesn't have to define you forever. A long-held fear, a repeated reaction, a recurring sadness, they are all seeds. They arise, they can be seen, and slowly, with gentle attention, they can change. Let me share a story I heard once. A woman had carried fear for decades, always worrying about the future, doubting herself. She started a simple practice, just noticing her breath for a few minutes each morning, noticing her thoughts without judgment. At first, it felt impossible. The mind raced. Old fears surged, but she kept watching softly, patiently. Over months, she began to see the patterns, the seeds of anxiety as they appeared. And gradually, those seeds lost their grip. She wasn't perfect, but she was freer. The river flowed a little more gently, and she discovered peace in the noticing itself. And this is the magic of mindfulness. It doesn't erase the past. It doesn't fight the present. It illuminates the flow of consciousness, the movement of karma, the flickering of each moment. When we watch with clarity, the river becomes less chaotic, less personal. We begin to see that suffering arises because of clinging, because of ignorance, because of feeding old seeds without noticing. And when we see it, we can choose, not through force, not through control, but through gentle awareness. Maybe you felt moments like this yourself. A rush of anger, a wave of sadness, a spark of joy, and maybe for the first time, you pause, you breathe, you notice, and in that pause the current shifts. The seed that could have grown into a storm now ripens differently. It becomes insight. It becomes understanding. It becomes freedom. It's okay if it feels slow. It's okay if the mind wanders, if the river rushes or swirls unpredictably. That's life. That's consciousness. The Buddha didn't promise perfection. He offered noticing, awareness, soft, gentle, persistent watching. And in that watching, little by little, the seeds of suffering lose their grip, and seeds of peace and wisdom begin to grow. And here's something gentle to carry. Every moment you notice, you are planting new seeds. Maybe it's a kind word, a deep breath, a soft observation. Maybe it's allowing a wave of sadness to pass without clinging, or a flash of joy to be fully felt. These moments are not grand. They are tiny, but they ripple through the river of your consciousness, shaping it quietly, softly, persistently. If this journey resonates, staying connected can help you continue noticing the river. Subscribing isn't just a click. It's a way of leaning into the flow, learning to float with awareness, one gentle moment at a time. Because each spark of noticing is a seed of freedom, and each seed changes a river in ways that may surprise you. So next time an emotion arises, a thought flickers, or a wave of habit pushes through, pause, breathe, notice, let the seed be seen. And maybe, just maybe, you'll watch the river flow a little more freely, a little more lightly, and a little more peacefully than before. And that, in itself, is enough. Maybe you've thought about what happens when a life ends. It's a question that stirs a little fear, a little curiosity, maybe even awe, and it's okay to wonder. The Buddha had a quiet, gentle way of looking at it. He didn't tell stories of judgment or punishment. He looked at the flow, the river of consciousness, and saw that it doesn't just stop because the body does. It continues, not as a fixed self, not as a soul, but as a current shaped by everything that has arisen before, thoughts, actions, intentions, the seeds of karma. Imagine a river that flows through seasons. It may seem like the water changes completely with the rain or the drought, but the river itself keeps moving. The currents carry traces of what came before. In the same way, consciousness carries karmic seeds, some ripening quickly, some taking longer, some lying dormant for a while. When a life ends, the body may fall away, but the current continues. And in that continuation, new moments arise. A new life begins, shaped not by fate or punishment, but by causes that have been planted, watered, and tended in the past. I remember reading about a farmer who watched his field season after season. Seeds he planted one year lay hidden beneath the soil, waiting for the right conditions to sprout. Some grew quickly, some slowly, and some never fully blossomed. He didn't need to dig up the soil to see the seeds. He just tended the field, observed, and knew that life unfolds naturally when conditions are right. Consciousness is like that. The seeds of past actions lie in a river, and when the conditions arise, a thought, a feeling, an experience, they bloom. This is what the Buddha called Patisannivaya, the rebirth consciousness, the first spark of awareness in a new life, carrying the tendencies shaped by past actions. Maybe it's a tendency toward patience or fear or generosity. And maybe it surprises you because it doesn't feel like a continuation of you in a strict sense. It's not a fixed self. It's a current, a flow, a river carrying traces of what has been. And that current is never separate from the present moment. The beauty of this understanding is that it's not fate. You aren't doomed by your past. You're not trapped. Every new moment is a chance to plant seeds differently, with awareness, with care, with kindness. A soft word, a gentle thought, a mindful breath. Each moment is fertile ground for new seeds to grow. And slowly, gently, the river of consciousness can change. The current can flow more freely, more lightly, more peacefully. I once heard a story of a man who carried guilt for decades. Old actions haunted him, shaping how he lived. He started a quiet practice, noticing his breath, his thoughts, his emotions. At first, the old seeds felt overwhelming, but with gentle awareness, he began to see the patterns. He didn't need to erase the past, didn't need to punish himself. He just noticed, and over time, he discovered that even the deepest seeds could soften, could transform. The river flowed differently. He could breathe more freely. He could live more kindly. And maybe that's what makes the Buddha's teaching so gentle, so human. It's not about chasing some abstract goal or figuring out mysteries in a lab. It's about noticing moment by moment the flow of your consciousness, seeing the seeds, seeing the river, seeing the impermanence, and in that seeing, finding freedom. Not far away, not someday, but right here in the simple act of awareness. So when a wave of old emotion rises, when a thought loops endlessly, when a habit seems unshakable, pause. Notice. Breathe. Maybe it's an old seed surfacing. Maybe it's a new one being planted. And in that noticing, you are shaping the river. You are gently guiding it. You are participating in the flow without clinging. And that in itself is profound. And if this gentle exploration feels meaningful, subscribing is a quiet way to continue walking this path together, to keep noticing, keep planting seeds of awareness, keep floating with the river of consciousness, moment by moment. Because every spark of noticing, every breath, every moment of gentle awareness is a chance for the river to flow more freely, more lightly, more peacefully. Maybe you wondered how different people, different cultures, and different philosophies think about consciousness. It's a question that's puzzled humans for thousands of years. Scientists study the brain, philosophers debate the mind, religions explore the soul. And it's okay to feel a little lost in all that thinking. But the Buddha's view is quiet and simple. He didn't try to solve a cosmic puzzle. He looked at life as it is, flowing, changing moment by moment. Consciousness isn't a thing inside us. It's not a container holding thoughts, feelings, memories, or a hidden me. It's a flickering, moving light, a river of awareness shaped by conditions. Think about seeing a sunset, the color, the light, the feeling that touches your heart. That's consciousness arising. But it's not inside a fix you. It's the meeting of eye, light, attention, and awareness. It's fleeting, beautiful, changing. And maybe for a moment, you just watch. You feel a little awe, a little wonder. And you realize the mind isn't something you own. It's something you participate in, like dancing with a river. And when you notice this, there's a soft kind of freedom. You aren't tied down to thoughts, moods, or fears. You can float with the flow. Western philosophers have asked similar questions. Descartes thought there was a thinker behind every thought, a soul watching the mind. But David Hume looked deeper and couldn't find a permanent self, just fleeting impressions, thoughts, feelings. And strangely, that second view echoes the Buddha's insight. There isn't a solid me behind the mind, just processes unfolding, just waves in the river, just moments of awareness coming and going. Now, Hindu philosophy presents something different. It speaks of Atman, a pure, unchanging self, one with the universal spirit. It's eternal, divine, a foundation that underlies everything. And the Buddha noticed this teaching in his time, but he took a different path. He looked closely at the mind, at experience, and saw that even the deepest layers of awareness, even the quiet storehouse of past karmic seeds, are shaped by conditions. They change, they arise and pass. And because they change, they are not permanent. They are not the self. Maybe you've experienced this in small ways yourself. A feeling of anger, then it fades. Joy arises, then moves on. A memory surfaces, then drifts away. And in that noticing, you see clearly, nothing stays, nothing is solid, nothing can be held. Even the currents of consciousness that seem most deeply buried, shaped by past intentions, are not fixed. They flow, and in that flow, there's a kind of gentle peace, a soft freedom that doesn't cling, doesn't force, doesn't resist. Here's a little story. A friend of mine once held on tightly to the idea of who they were, their habits, their reactions, their identity. Every change felt threatening. But through mindfulness, watching the flow of thoughts, feelings, and awareness, they began to notice the patterns. They saw the old seeds of fear, anger, and doubt. And as they noticed, something shifted. They didn't become perfect. They didn't erase the past. But they began to feel lighter. The river of consciousness felt softer, more fluid, more open. And maybe that's what the Buddha meant by freedom, not control, not fixing, but noticing, flowing, and letting the current carry you gently. And the Buddha's view isn't just abstract philosophy. It's practical. It shows that suffering arises because we cling, because we grasp, because we mistake temporary flashes of awareness for a permanent self. But when you watch, moment by moment, what arises and passes, you loosen the grip, the seeds of suffering, old habits, old fears, old patterns begin to lose power. And the seeds of kindness, awareness, and peace begin to grow. If this journey feels meaningful, subscribing can be a quiet invitation to keep exploring together, to keep noticing, keep watching, keep floating with the river of awareness, moment by moment. Because every breath, every spark of noticing, every gentle observation is a seed. And those seeds, nurtured softly, grow into freedom, clarity, and peace. So next time a thought surfaces, a feeling arises, or a habit loops in your mind, pause. Just watch, just breathe, and maybe, just maybe, you'll see the flow more clearly. You'll feel the river carrying the traces of the past and the possibilities of now. You'll float a little lighter, a little freer, and a little more alive. Maybe you've looked around and wondered, who or what is conscious? We naturally think of humans first, of course, because we feel, we think, we remember. But then you notice your dog staring at you, or the gentle sway of a tree in the wind, or the stars shining silently in the night sky. And a question arises, what really has consciousness? It's okay to wonder, to feel a little awe, maybe a little confusion. The Buddha had a quiet answer. Consciousness, awareness, arises when conditions are just right. It's not magical. It's not everywhere. It's not nowhere. Imagine your dog looking at you with those trusting eyes. There's awareness there, right? Joy, fear, curiosity. The dog feels pain, pleasure, connection. Not words, not abstract thinking, but real, living knowing. And the Buddha would say, yes, that's consciousness, flowing the same way it does in humans, shaped by the senses, shaped by experiences, shaped by karma. And that's why compassion matters deeply, because awareness is precious. It arises in beings that can feel, that can suffer, that can find joy. Now look at a plant. Maybe a sunflower turning toward the sun. Maybe a vine climbing a fence. Science shows that plants respond to stimuli in incredible ways. But the Buddha draws a line here. Consciousness, true knowing, arises only with the six sense faculties: sight, hearing, touch, taste, smell, and mind. Plants are alive, yes, but they don't see colors, hear sounds, or think thoughts in the same way sentient beings do. They don't carry karma. They don't have that flickering awareness that notices, that experiences, that can suffer or rejoice. And that's okay. Plants grow. They nourish the world. But consciousness, in the Buddha sense, doesn't arise there. And what about the universe itself? Stars, planets, galaxies. Do they see, do they know, do they feel? Some people feel awe in the cosmos and imagine consciousness everywhere. Maybe it's tempting to think that the universe is aware, that it watches, that it cares. And it's okay to feel that wonder. But Buddhism reminds us, the cosmos follows conditions, laws, patterns, not awareness. Rocks don't gaze. Winds don't understand. Galaxies don't make choices. Consciousness arises only where the right conditions exist, in beings with the faculties to flow and the seeds of karma to support it. Here's a little story that helps me remember this. I once watched a robot moving through a garden. It could sense the flowers, water the plants, even respond to my voice. But there was no awareness there, no joy in the sunlight, no curiosity, no fear, no kindness, just programmed responses. And it made me think, consciousness isn't complexity alone. You can have many moving parts, but without awareness, without feeling, without attention, there's no someone there. The Buddha would say it's the same with living beings. The flow of consciousness is rare. Precious, it appears only when the right conditions, body, mind, senses, attention, and karma come together. Maybe that's what makes awareness feel so intimate, so fragile, so extraordinary. You, reading this, feeling, noticing, thinking, this river of consciousness is rare, and it's yours to care for. And seeing it clearly changes how we live. We become gentle with ourselves, patient with others, and aware of the preciousness of life. Each moment of awareness is a chance to plant seeds, seeds of kindness, understanding, patience, peace. And the more we notice, the more we see that this awareness isn't something to cling to. It's something to participate in, to nurture, and to let flow. So next time a thought arises, a feeling sweeps through, or a habit repeats, pause, watch, notice, breathe. You don't need to fix it. You don't need to control it. Just let yourself see. And maybe, just maybe, you'll feel the river of consciousness flowing softly, carrying both the traces of the past and the possibilities of the present. And in that flow, there is a quiet, tender freedom, a gentle awakening that begins with noticing, with being, with allowing. Maybe by now, you've noticed something about your own mind, how thoughts rise, linger, and fade, how emotions ripple like waves, how consciousness flows like a river, carrying both the seeds of the past and the possibilities of the present. And maybe you felt, even for a moment, that freedom doesn't come from control, from forcing, or from fixing. It comes from noticing. It comes from the quiet attention to the river itself, the gentle seeing of what is without judgment, without grasping. Mindfulness is that gentle watching. It's not about changing everything immediately. It's not about suppressing thoughts or emotions. It's about letting them appear moment by moment, like clouds drifting across the sky. Maybe you notice a feeling of sadness, a flicker of irritation, a spark of joy. Maybe you feel your heart tighten or your mind race. And that's okay. You just watch. You breathe. You notice the river flowing. And in that noticing, the currents of karma, the seeds of past actions, intentions, and experiences begin to soften. I remember a friend who carried anger for years. It colored every interaction, every thought, every choice. And one day, they began a simple practice, sitting quietly, noticing the breath, noticing the rising anger without trying to push it away. At first, it felt impossible. The river seemed wild, untamed. But slowly, over weeks and months, something shifted. They didn't erase the anger. They didn't deny it. They simply watched. And in the watching, the anger began to lose its grip. It became a wave in the river, not the river itself. And that, they realized, was freedom. And maybe that's what makes the Buddha's teaching so intimate, so gentle. He doesn't ask you to chase an abstract idea of enlightenment. He asks you to notice, to see the fleeting nature of thoughts and feelings, to see the river flowing, to see the seeds of karma as they arise. And in that seeing, you discover a quiet, soft peace, a peace that doesn't depend on the outside world, a peace that comes from understanding the flow, from seeing clearly, and from letting go of clinging to what is not permanent. The practice is simple, but not easy. Every moment offers a choice, to react, to cling, to resist, or to pause, notice, breathe, and allow. Every thought, every feeling, every habit is a chance to plant new seeds, seeds of awareness, compassion, patience, and understanding. And slowly, over time, the river changes. The currents become gentler. The flow becomes lighter. The mind becomes a little more spacious, a little freer, a little more alive. Maybe it's okay to start small, noticing a breath, feeling a sensation, watching a thought, noticing a child laughing, a friend smiling, the sun on your skin. Each of these is a moment of consciousness. Each is a chance to see clearly, to plant a seed, to awaken gently. And each moment, no matter how fleeting, is enough. If you followed this journey, maybe subscribing quietly to this channel is a way to continue walking together, to keep noticing, keep planting seeds of awareness, keep floating with the river, one gentle moment at a time. Because every spark of noticing is a seed of freedom, and every seed, nurtured softly, grows into clarity, peace, and wisdom. So next time a wave of emotion rises, a thought loops, or a habit repeats, pause, watch, breathe. Maybe it's an old seed opening, or maybe it's a new one being planted. And in that noticing, you are participating in the flow of life itself. The river of consciousness is moving, carrying traces of the past and the possibilities of now. And you are here, softly, gently noticing, and perhaps that's enough. Perhaps that's everything.